Last time you spoke to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know. He betrayed me.
Jesse the Body Ventura accused Hogan of the ultimate betrayal, describing his actions as the kind of disloyalty that cuts the deepest and
Can't
leaves
believe that Hulk Hogan would do this.
to Bret the Hitman Hart. Hogan was guilty of outright career sabotage, with accusations that his actions blocked opportunities and damaged Hart's rise in the wrestling world.
I do not have any respect for him to this day. And I would like to like the guy, but I don't have any respect for him. You know, I believe he's not a real person. You know? I think everything's a facade with Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan may be a legend to fans, but to many fellow wrestlers he is viewed as the villain. Here are 10 WWE stars who openly despise him, and their reasons are more shocking than you might think. First on the list is Doink the Clown, also known as Matt Bourne, the original performer behind the character. Bourne carried serious personal grievances against Hogan that went far beyond what happened in the ring. While it might seem odd that a clown character would clash with the iconic Hulk Hogan, Bourne's issues with him were rooted in far more than just wrestling storylines.
About Hogan,
15 minutes on it.
I didn't care. You know, I never put him over when he was around. I never even went out of my way to talk to him.
Bourne accused Hogan of being phony and mistreating people backstage, saying he could never respect him or even look him in the eye because of his hypocrisy. In wrestling, respect is everything, and when another wrestler admits they can't even meet your gaze because of your behavior, it stands as one of the harshest criticisms possible. Bourne's words suggest that Hogan's backstage behavior was so different from his public image that it left those who worked with him genuinely disgusted.
It's the same guy who says that he took wrestling out of the smoke-filled little back alley, whatever he called it, to mainstream. You know, before this idiot, and I'll call him an idiot, came into the scene, there was an Argentino Rocca who was wrestling in Madison Square Garden, and all the other big...
The hypocrisy that Bourne highlighted likely came from Hogan's image as an all-American hero who preached training, prayers, and vitamins while allegedly living the opposite way behind the scenes. For someone like Matt Bourne, who valued authenticity, even while portraying a clown character, this kind of two-faced behavior was especially troubling. His criticism also felt more credible because he was not a main event star or chasing championship glory, meaning jealousy was not his motive. His dislike for Hogan came solely from what he observed of Hogan's character and behavior as both a person and a co-worker. At number 9, we move to one of the most respected figures in WWE history, Bruno Sammartino, the man who carried the company for over a decade with 2 legendary WWE Championship reigns that together lasted more than 11 years. Sammartino openly disliked Hogan's cartoonish style, believing it overshadowed traditional wrestling, and he accused him of practicing ego-driven politics. He even refused to accept a Hall of Fame induction until the Hogan era had ended. When Hogan returned with his Hollywood persona and entertainment-first approach, it represented everything Sammartino believed was destroying the true essence of professional wrestling.
Talk about the wonderful things he did to this business by being one of the wonderful steroid chemical robots that came to this business, which is an unfortunate and tragic thing because there've been a lot of deaths, drug-related.
The strongest sign of Sammartino's dislike for Hogan was his refusal to enter the WWE Hall of Fame while Hogan remained a major figure in the company. Think about that. Bruno Sammartino, the man who helped shape WWE into what it became, rejected the company's highest honor because he couldn't stand being associated with what Hogan represented. For Bruno, wrestling was never just entertainment. It was a legitimate athletic competition that demanded respect. He came from an era where wrestlers were expected to be real athletes who could handle themselves in any situation, and Hogan's over-the-top persona combined with his limited in-ring ability was the complete opposite of those values. For Sammartino, that was something he simply could not accept.
My real name is Terry Bollea, my real name is Randy Poffo, and he disrespected me and my family through the media.
But Bruno's issues with Hogan went far deeper than just stylistic differences. He was especially critical of Hogan's ego-driven politics and how he used his influence to protect his own spot while holding back more deserving wrestlers. Coming From a man who had willingly given up the WWE Championship multiple times to elevate new talent, this criticism carried enormous weight. Sammartino's immigrant background also shaped his view of what it meant to be a true American hero. Having come to the United States from Italy as a child, he built his career on values like hard work, determination, and genuine heroism. When he looked at Hogan, he didn't see those values, he saw someone playing a role rather than living it, and that lack of authenticity disturbed him deeply. The respect Sammartino commanded in the wrestling world made his criticism even more powerful, because when a man often considered the greatest WWE champion of all time refuses to share a Hall of Fame with you, it sends a very clear message about your character and reputation among your peers. At number 8, we come to one of wrestling's most heartbreaking stories of friendship turned into bitter hatred. Randy Macho Man Savage. Savage carried resentment over personal issues involving Miss Elizabeth, accusing Hogan of crossing boundaries. Though the two eventually reconciled before Savage's death in 2011, he spent years publicly blasting Hogan through interviews and even rap songs, making his anger toward the Hulkster impossible to miss.
Situation with me and Hulk Hogan is just, we've been acquaintances at best, never been best friends, never been friends.
The personal issues involving Miss Elizabeth that drove a wedge between Savage and Hogan have fueled speculation in wrestling circles for decades. While the exact details were never fully confirmed, many believed Hogan crossed personal boundaries with Savage's real-life wife and on-screen manager, creating a rift that would go on to shape both men's careers for years to come.
You see what I'm saying? He goes on the airwaves and he disrespects me. He gives me a shot over the radio, gives me a shot over the TV, he gives me a shot over the internet, here and there, but nothing face to face.
The tragedy of the Savage-Hogan relationship was that their massive success in the late 1980s masked the personal tension steadily growing between them. As the mega powers, they delivered one of WWE's most iconic storylines, but behind the scenes their friendship was crumbling, not due to scripted rivalries, but because of real-life personal conflicts they were never able to truly overcome.
Put Hulk Hogan in the Royal Rumble, I'll throw his dust over the top rope, and I'll kill Hulkamania once and for all.
The reconciliation that happened before Savage's death in 2011 added a new layer of complexity to their story. Hogan's Hall of Fame induction speech for Savage was filled with real emotion and regret, showing that despite all the issues between them, both men ultimately wanted to repair their friendship. However, the years of resentment had already left lasting scars. Savage's long refusal to return to WWE was partly tied to his problems with Hogan, and their inability to resolve things professionally cost both men major opportunities and potential earnings. Their story serves as a cautionary tale of how the wrestling business can destroy even the strongest friendships when egos, money, and personal issues collide. At number 7, we have CM Punk, the outspoken straight-edge superstar famous for never holding back when it came to wrestling's biggest names. Punk openly called Hogan a piece of garbage and even said forget him in interviews, going so far as to reference him negatively in his iconic 2011 pipe bomb promo. His dislike for Hogan only deepened after meeting him personally and learning more about his many scandals.
As good as kissing Vince's Hulk Hogan was.
Punk's famous pipe bomb promo in 2011 directly targeted Hogan, using him as the symbol of everything wrong with WWE's corporate culture and star-making system. It wasn't just a scripted jab pretending to be real, it was an honest outpouring of Punk's frustration with how the company was run and how legends like Hogan were glorified while the wrestlers carrying the workload in the present were often ignored and undervalued.
I got beat my first, match after turning heel. The call was made by Hulk Hogan to have me beat.
What made Punk's criticism even more damaging was that it came from someone with no personal history with Hogan during his prime. His dislike only deepened after meeting Hogan and learning about his scandals, proving that his opinion was based on Hogan's behavior and reputation rather than grudges or rivalries. Punk's straight-edge lifestyle also clashed with Hogan's way of doing business. As someone who prided himself on honesty and authenticity, Punk was disgusted by what he saw as Hogan's dishonesty and manipulation. The contrast between Punk's strict stance against drugs and alcohol and Hogan's later admission of steroid use made Hogan's choices even more offensive in Punk's eyes. His harshest comments also came during Hogan's biggest scandals, including the racism controversy, which for Punk, who always presented himself as socially aware and progressive, was completely unacceptable. His criticism carried even more weight because he was not a bitter mid-carder but a proven main eventer who had headlined WrestleMania and held the WWE Championship for over 400 days. This was the perspective of a top star who had reached wrestling's highest levels and still found Hogan's actions indefensible. At number 6, we have Scott Steiner, the genetically gifted powerhouse whose hatred for Hulk Hogan was as explosive as his personality. Steiner publicly called Hogan a racist and far worse in shoot interviews, citing Hogan's Hall of Fame induction of Randy Savage, whom Steiner claimed despised Hogan, and even recalling heated confrontations at airports. Their long history in WWE only made Steiner's animosity stronger, as he witnessed firsthand how Hogan manipulated things behind the scenes. Never one to hold back, Steiner became one of Hogan's most outspoken and relentless critics, delivering harsh takedowns that left no doubt about his true feelings.
When another wrestler decides he's going to decide who wins is both.
Why do you think he did that?
He's a There's no other way you can say it, you know, he's a piece of shit.
Steiner's branding of Hogan as a racist and far worse was not just casual trash talk. It was a serious accusation from someone who had worked closely with him during some of the most successful and controversial times of their careers. What made his criticism even more striking was his mention of Randy Savage's true feelings toward Hogan. Steiner claimed that Savage hated him, and given their close friendship, he was in a position to know the reality of their relationship. This added credibility to his attacks, as he wasn't only speaking from personal experience but also voicing what other wrestlers had felt about Hogan. The Big Bad Booty Daddy's criticism also stemmed from his own frustrations trying to break into Wook's main event scene. While Hogan held a firm grip on the spotlight, Steiner, with his legitimate amateur wrestling background and incredible physical gifts, felt sidelined by what he saw as Hogan's undeserved dominance at the top. The fact that Steiner continued blasting Hogan long after WWE had folded showed that this was not about professional jealousy, but genuine personal dislike fueled by years of first-hand experiences. His relentless comments in interviews and shoot videos proved that his resentment never faded, instead becoming a lasting judgment on Hogan's character.
After I lost my belt to him, Mr. Howard, he come in the locker room. He said, "Shiki baby, I love you. I owe you one." And after that, he never returned my call.
Steiner's accusations that Hogan was a racist proved to be disturbingly accurate after Hogan's racist comments surfaced in the 2015 tape scandal. This suggested that Steiner may have known about Hogan's true attitudes long before they became public, which only gave his earlier criticism more credibility in hindsight. At number 5, we have the Iron Sheik, whose hatred for Hulk Hogan became legendary through his unfiltered presence on social media. Sheik frequently tweeted about Hogan, tearing into him for his ego and racism, which he traced back to their 1984 feud and the real-life tensions that followed. His disdain for Hogan stayed loud, raw, and unapologetically public right up until the day he died.
I don't like Hulk Hogan himself.
The Iron Sheik's famous tweets about Hulk Hogan became a constant theme on his social media, delivered with the same intensity and conviction that defined his wrestling persona. Their 1984 feud was supposed to launch Hulkamania, with Sheik losing to cement Hogan as the all-American hero. But behind the scenes, their relationship was far more complex than the simple good versus evil storyline fans watched on TV. What made Sheik's hatred so compelling was how it mixed both professional and personal grievances. The accusations of ego and racism he leveled at Hogan weren't just empty insults, they were direct, specific claims built on years of working alongside Hogan and witnessing his behavior both in and out of the ring.
You and Hulk were once good friends.
Yeah,
What's the likelihood of that ever being repaired?
never.
Why?
Can't trust him. I'm not friends with anyone I don't trust. I have to have a trust with someone to be their friend. And he's the one that ratted me to Vince when I tried to unionize.
The social media side of Iron Sheik's hatred for Hogan was especially entertaining because it showed how old-school wrestling grudges could evolve with modern technology. Instead of settling things in the ring or behind closed doors, Sheik used Twitter as his weapon, turning their decades-old feud into an ongoing public spectacle. What made his criticism so powerful was its consistency. This wasn't a publicity stunt or a temporary beef. It was genuine dislike that he expressed over many years, right up until his death. His accusations of racism carried extra weight because of his own experiences as an Iranian-American wrestler who was often portrayed as the foreign heel, giving his perspective a credibility rooted in personal history. Sheik's hatred also reflected the complex relationships of wrestling's territorial era, where wrestlers often worked together professionally while harboring real animosity behind the scenes. The fact that his conflict with Hogan lasted long, after both men had retired, proved just how deep the resentment truly went. At number 4, we have Jesse the Body Ventura, whose hatred for Hogan came from what he considered the ultimate betrayal of wrestler solidarity. Ventura accused Hogan of informing Vince McMahon about his 1986 unionization efforts, which led to threats of firings. In interviews and even in his book, Ventura branded Hogan a backstabber and a narcissist, solidifying his resentment for decades.
I didn't show any emotion, but I almost tipped over in the chair because he was my friend. And I thought, but then I understand why. When we went to court, I saw in WrestleMania 3, Hogan got paid more than all of us combined. Now, why would he want a union when he's getting taken care of?
The 1986 unionization effort led by Ventura had the potential to completely change the wrestling business by giving wrestlers health care, retirement plans, and basic worker protections that are still missing today. Ventura had rallied the locker room before WrestleMania 2, but according to him, Hogan tipped off McMahon, who then threatened to fire anyone who supported the movement, effectively killing it. This was more than just a personal betrayal, it was a decision that may have cost every wrestler in the company millions in benefits and long-term security. What made it even worse was that Ventura didn't discover Hogan's role until years later during his 1991 lawsuit against McMahon over royalties, when testimony revealed Hogan's involvement. That meant Ventura had to live with the consequences of the failed union effort for years before finally learning who had sabotaged it.
You start working with WWE again. Would you consider burying the hatchet with Hulk Hogan?
No,
Conversation at least?
I don't know.
When was the last time you spoke to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know. He betrayed.
What made Hogan's betrayal especially glaring was the motivation behind it. Ventura explained that Hogan was earning more money than the entire WrestleMania 3 roster combined, yet instead of standing with his peers to secure health care and basic protections, he chose to protect his own paycheck and actively sabotaged efforts that could have helped everyone. For Ventura, this was more than selfish, it was outright offensive. As a former military man and someone who later went into politics, Ventura deeply valued solidarity and collective action. His time with the Screen Actors Guild during his role in Predator had already shown him how unions could protect performers, which made Hogan's actions even more frustrating. The consequences of Hogan's decision were massive and long-lasting. Wrestling remains non-unionized to this day, and many still point to this incident as a major reason why. Every wrestler who has struggled without health care, every veteran left without a pension, and every performer who has been exploited by promoters can trace part of their struggles back to Hogan's role in destroying Ventura's union effort.
To know that I was going to drop the belt back and what was going on. I mean, that came up out of nowhere. But I kind of figured like, oh, okay, maybe it's because he's telling everybody that I hurt him, Hulk was still
the fact that Ventura never reconciled with Hogan and even went on to criticize him in recent years for appearing at Trump rallies shows that this was never just a passing disagreement. Ventura's ongoing condemnation decades later proves that he considered Hogan's betrayal unforgivable. At number 3, we have The Undertaker, whose revelation about Hogan's dishonesty sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. In 1991, Hogan claimed he suffered a neck injury from a tombstone piledriver, but Undertaker later revealed it was a lie meant to avoid losing, calling it a betrayal that destroyed the trust between them. He has since spoken about the incident on podcasts, describing it as a clear example of Hogan's relentless obsession with protecting his own position.
Terry, I watched it back. Your head never hit. He's like, well, brother, what it was you had me so tight that when we came down, I had nowhere to move. And that's what jammed my neck, because I couldn't move at all.
The Undertaker's revelation about Hogan's deception remains one of the most damaging accusations ever made against the Hulkster, especially because it came from one of the most respected figures in wrestling. When The Undertaker speaks, the industry listens, and his account of Hogan's dishonesty carried enormous weight. The incident at Tuesday in Texas in 1991 was meant to be a routine spot, with The Undertaker delivering his tombstone piledriver, but according to him, Hogan lied about suffering a neck injury to avoid losing, using the claim as a fabricated excuse to protect his character and championship reign. What made this betrayal particularly painful for The Undertaker was its timing. It happened early in his WWE career, when he was still working to prove himself as a main event star. Having the company's top name accuse him of causing a serious injury could have easily damaged his credibility and even derailed his rise to the top.
Was everything in wrestling, and that everyone else we were all backup players to Hulk Hogan, and that's the way he saw it. And once that belt was on me, I became the enemy, or somebody that had to be removed.
The Undertaker felt especially betrayed when Hogan later admitted that his claim of a neck injury was not about safety or health. It was simply a political move to protect his spot at the top, particularly with rising stars like The Rock waiting in the wings. What made this so damaging was how it could have ruined The Undertaker's reputation as a safe worker. In wrestling, being seen as someone who injures opponents can end a career, and Hogan's false accusation could have tarnished The Undertaker's standing with management and his peers. This revelation also highlighted how Hogan's instinct for self-preservation often came at the expense of his colleagues' careers and reputations. While Hogan was focused on protecting his own character and storylines, others were left dealing with the fallout, including unnecessary drama and damage to their credibility. At number 2, we have Shawn Michaels, whose 2005 feud with Hogan became legendary for all the wrong reasons. What should have been a dream match between two of wrestling's biggest stars turned into a display of professional frustration and personal animosity. Michaels wanted a multi-match series with both men trading wins, but Hogan allegedly refused to lose more than once. In protest, Michaels mocked him during their match by overselling Hogan's offense with exaggerated bumps and dramatic reactions, turning it into one of the most entertaining acts of pettiness in wrestling history. This wasn't simply unprofessional behavior, it was a calculated artistic statement about Hogan's ego and limited wrestling ability. Every over-the-top reaction was Michaels' way of saying that if Hogan wanted to be treated like a true main event star, he had to act like one. The frustration was amplified by the fact that Michaels was in a stage of his career where he was putting over younger talent, while Hogan, well past his prime, refused to do the same. Their backstage tension also mirrored a larger problem in WWE at the time, balancing respect for legends with the need to build new stars, with Hogan unwilling to accept his role as a returning veteran. And finally, at number 1, we have Bret the Hitman Hart, whose relentless criticism of Hogan stands as perhaps the most thorough takedown ever delivered by another wrestler. Hart repeatedly called Hogan a phony and accused him of sabotaging his career, including refusing to drop the WWF Championship to him after WrestleMania 9. In his autobiography and countless interviews, Hart blasted Hogan's in-ring skills, famously saying he didn't know a headlock from a headlamp, while also accusing him of holding grudges and influencing per booking decisions in WWE. Hart's words carried extra weight because they didn't just come from bitterness, they came from years of first-hand experience dealing with Hogan both inside and outside the ring.
Pissed off. I'm so mad. I can't believe that Hulk Hogan would do this to me. Like, I was a guy that always thought of him as a friend and vice versa. And this, I know I worked really hard to finally climb up that ladder to get to that spot. I worked so hard. And here he was, stopped.
Bret Hart's hatred for Hulk Hogan is perhaps the most well-documented and detailed criticism ever leveled against the Hulkster by another wrestler. Hart's attacks were never just heated outbursts or passing grudges, they were carefully built indictments based on years of professional interaction and personal observation. The WrestleMania 9 incident, which Hart often highlighted, summed up everything he felt was wrong with Hogan's approach to the business. After Hart endured a grueling match against Yokozuna and lost the WWE Championship, Hogan allegedly convinced Vince McMahon to change the planned finish, inserting himself into the main event to win the title in just minutes. For Hart, this wasn't simply about losing a championship, it was about Hogan's outright disregard for fairness, storytelling, and logic. Hart also claimed that Hogan promised to drop the belt back to him later but went back on his word, using his backstage influence to avoid putting Hart over while making him look weak in the process. His famous line that Hogan didn't know a headlock from a headlamp became one of wrestling's most quoted insults, perfectly capturing his belief that Hogan's wrestling ability was grossly overrated compared to his star power and political maneuvering. But Hart's criticism went beyond Hogan's in-ring ability. He also accused him of trying to label him as nothing more than a tag team wrestler in private conversations, a move aimed at undermining Hart's credibility as a singles star despite his undeniable talent.